If everyone, if you guys would like to do the pledge, I would appreciate that. So if we could all stand. Ready? Salute the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. So I've had a few town halls. Again, I'm Supervisor Doug Teeter, representing District 5. McGilly and Paradise is the biggest communities. These town halls are really something special because of the panel we form or the people that do the presentation. I'm just kind of the moderator. So we have Senator Jim Nielsen right here. We have Greg McFadden. He's the chief of Butte County Fire and CAL FIRE. We have Supervisor Earl Ford, the Forest Supervisor of the Plumas National Forest. Can you introduce your person next to you?
I'm Steve Miller, I'm the Forest Fire Chief of the Plumas National Forest.
We have Mike Holmes.
He's over here.
Sorry. And that's representing the Lassie National Forest. Jeremy Strait. Jeremy's representing the BLM. Joe Wilson. He's representing PGA. He's got his best shirt there. Jerry Jones, Butte County Sheriff. And John Consolidate. He's the Emergency Services Officer for Butte County. We also have Sharon Christensen. You can come up and sit up here. You don't want to? Okay. She represents Bear on the Ridge, and I really appreciate all the fundraising that Bear on the Ridge does for this community. So it's not just Sharon, it's all those behind her as well. So and a lot of them are here. So thank you very much for all your efforts. We also have Daryl Wilson, who's the chair of the Butte County Fire Safe Council. There he is. I don't know if Warren Lee has made it, but he's back there. Thank you, sir. He's a BLM road. What's your title again?
My name is Warren Lee. I'm with the U.S. Department of Transportation, Federal Highway Administrator, Denver, Colorado. I'm a regional engineer for Southern California roads built by the federal highways.
Thank you, sir. And why he's pertinent at this meeting is they're currently redoing the bridges. One at the Doe Mill over the Butte Creek, and the other one they're redecking the bridge down at Whiskey Flats. So thank you for coming. We also have Tom Kelly, which is sitting next to him, who's been very instrumental in getting those bridges we built. I want to thank you for that. We have Councilwoman Jody Jones. And next door is Lauren Gill, who's the manager of the town park. So, again, thanks everyone for. Yes, sir.
I also wanted to introduce our new ranger at Orville from the Federal Ranger District, Randy Gould. Lots of questions. He's been here 2 weeks.
I know Randy and I are going to be meeting soon, and I appreciate that. And thanks for coming. I didn't know you were coming. Nice. Thanks for introducing me. So we're here to see CAL FIRE's presentation. But first, I want to thank the Paradise Alliance Church for allowing us this venue. And thank you very much. Wally Carey's back there doing the soundboard, so thanks. And, I'd be remiss if I didn't really give credit to who makes my office really go round and round, Robin Bennett. So bathrooms are through the door that's lit. There's a fountain there if you get thirsty. And the only rules here is to be respectful to others that are speaking. And if If something doesn't get answered tonight and you really want it answered, you can call my office anytime and I can hook you up with whoever it needs to be. So let's get going. Chief McFadden, thanks again.
Can everybody hear me okay? I am kind of walk around a lot so I can see as we do a PowerPoint presentation. A few more introductions just from our agency also is we have the battalion chief for the town of Paradise in the Cal Fire uniform is Curtis Lowry in the back there. Again, pretty new to the unit also, but just recently took over Battalion 1, which encompasses kind of the old east side of Paradise, Jarbo Gap, Upper Ridge, Magalia, Sterling City area is Bill Reed. And then our UCC chief, Bruce Hassick, he's on his last few weeks before he retires, but he's here also. So we thought the best way to kind of present the information about lookouts and what's happening out there is going to kind of break it down into 3 different agenda topics we're going to cover. And we'll just kind of hope this is working here.
And if anyone on the panel wants to go down and watch the presentation, please.
We'll talk a brief history about Butte County lookouts in general. So what's been happening in Butte County in the lookouts since the early 1920s and beyond, where we're going to now. We'll also talk about Sawmill Peak. That's where a lot of people are here to discuss Sawmill Peak and the value it has for the community of Paradise and Upper Ridge and how we use it in our system in helping us get intelligence about fires in the wildland. We'll also talk about lookout options. Where are we going in the future? What's the future of lookouts and what's happening? Based on funding and hiring and maintaining the facilities, it's a challenge for everybody, and that's what we have to struggle with on a daily basis. And anywhere along the way, you want to stop me and ask me a question, let's kind of wait to the end, because I have a whole section just for questions. So let me get through this, because I might be answering your question in the next slide. So if it's something, keep it kind of in your head. If you want to ask a question, we'll make sure we follow up with that, okay? So the early years were pretty rough being a lookout. It's kind of tough duty there to be a lookout on a tree somewhere. You got to climb up there. So the weather was pretty tough on it then. So let's talk about Butte County and the history of Butte County. The first private lookout in California was actually in Butte County on Bald Mountain. So it was sponsored and built by the Diamond Match Company. So historically wise, we have some history here on lookouts. So when the very first one that was privately built was that one. And that's the main purpose was what? Protect the timber industry. That was its main goal. So between 1933 and 1944, the 3 Cs built a lot of lookouts up and down the whole west coast of California. About 250 lookouts were built. Now you can imagine during that era, they probably weren't building for fire detection. They were building because of World War II and enemy detection of aircraft coming into the west coast. So that was the main purpose of lookouts back then, was to be spotters for any enemy aircraft that may be coming into the area. So during the 40s, though, there were up to 10 lookouts in Butte County that served kind of that role and for detection of wildfires in the eastern foothills of Butte County. Back then, it was not called CAL FIRE, but just referred to CAL FIRE. Back then, the Division of Forestry, U.S. Forest Service, and different lumber companies shared that responsibility of the funding and maintenance of those lookouts. So there's quite a few lookouts at one time that were really actively used in detecting fires and helping us find fires out there. But over time, many have suffered because of maintenance issues and funding. Several of those towers no longer exist, some of them still do, and it's a shared responsibility in trying to maintain those, and it's a challenge for us. The maintenance of those towers are very challenging because one is the weather, and now there's more roads out there in the rural areas that allow more people to go there than go up there and either vandalize or destroy them or deface them, and we have that challenge on a yearly basis to take care of that. So, Butte County, I hope everybody can see that. This is kind of what our current lookouts look like. We have some to the north, and I'll let the Forest Service talk about that here shortly. About the Forest Service also has lookouts in the northern Lassen National Forest and the Plumas National Forest to the north of our county and to the south of our county that report to our unit. They report to our command center when they're staffed, and they radio into our command centers on a daily basis when they're staffed. And we have a slide later for them to talk a little bit more about their staffing and how the lookouts function. But we have Platte Mountain, which is a lookout, but we don't staff it. It's something we use on an interim basis if we have fire weather comes in that needs to be staffed as an extra set of eyes because of a lightning series coming in or really strong winds, we might staff that. Platt Mountain, which is off Highway 32, right in this area. Okay, it's still, a tower that's still there. Matter of fact, it's still used for some training for radio operators and things like that. They do a lot of things around that tower. But we have traditionally not staffed that tower in the last 25, 30 years, like that, at least, since I've been in this unit. We have never staffed that tower. Other than we might put something up there for a couple days, or a firefighter goes up there just because there's a weather system coming in. Then we have Bald Mountain, which is, everybody knows, to the north. We have Sawmill, Bloomer, Sunset, and then to the south of our county is Pike Peak or Pike County Lookout. So those are lookouts that are still functional as lookouts, but they're not all staffed. They're just there as we need them. We will go staff those based on fire weather conditions. So, Sawmill Peak, let's talk a little bit about Sawmill Peak. It was originally built in 1929. It sits on Plymouth National Forest property. But the CAL FIRE agency leases it and we maintain it. So we have that relationship where we kind of maintain it. And we lease the property that that tower sits on there. Let's go ahead and try to hit that link if you wouldn't mind. There's a lot of web page information about lookouts. So this is kind of look at some of the things that happen. Can you go up to Butte County or scroll down? Just scroll down. So if you read some of these things, I'm not going to read all of them. That's fine right there. So back in 1937, some logs that were done in that tower when somebody was in there. So it was damaged because of wind. It was a strong storm system, and it got damaged. The same damage back then, just because the weather was so strong and causing bombs. And then also in 1938, they thought they had a report of a smoke, but it turned out to be actually a broken water main up towards Sterling City. That was just water vapor, and they were all excited about reporting a smoke, but actually just turned out to be water vapor. So it's kind of interesting to look at some history and some logs that took place back in the 30s that Sawmill Peak and what it reported at the time. Okay, go ahead and put that one down. Thank you. So let's talk about how we staff the Sawmill Peak and what we've been doing traditionally and how it's revolved into where it's at now. So it takes a seasonal firefighter to kind of, not a firefighter, but it's a seasonal fire lookout position that we have historically been used to fill that position. Some other places in the state they use volunteers for prevention or VIPs or anybody who wants to get involved and be that. But historically we've always done a trained individual that's been hired on the state system, and that's how they end up being in that position. So the title of that position is a seasonal fire lookout position. Their jobs are to watch for fires from the tower lookout, the lookout tower. Report fires to locations to the Emergency Command Center. ECC stands for Emergency Command Center. And our Emergency Command Center in Orville is where all the operational things happen, and all our dispatching happens for all the entire county, except for the corporate areas of Chico and Orville City. Otherwise, we dispatch for all the other agencies out of that area in Orville, ECC. They make weather observations. So whether there's a storm system coming in, or a thunder cell coming in, or wind event is happening, they are required to make a weather observation. So they're monitoring the weather all the time. They have the ability to read a map and understand the communities and communicate that by radio. So they need to know where north, south, and east and west is, and what communities they're looking at, and be able to communicate that properly via radio. Their job, they have to maintain the tower, because there's still things that need to go on. So there's running water, and there's facilities clean, there's a kitchen they're maintained, and they try to maintain the grounds around there a little bit, because we do get visitors that want to come by and see what the lookouts are all about. They do have their willingness to work alone. They're in a remote area by themselves. And some people just don't like to get to lookouts or drive that far to get there. And those that have driven to Sawmill Peak Lookout, you guys know the road condition now, and you can't even get there from this side because there's no bridge. And we're in the process of accomplishing that. That bridge is almost done, so we're getting closer to having that. But the road itself is chewed up and pretty bad to get up there. If you go up there in your little Volkswagen Bug, you may not have a bug when you get done. You're gonna tear it all up. They're on duty for 24 hours a day, so they're not sleeping. They're sleeping at night up there. So after it gets dark, they usually are going to bed. And sometimes when we have a thunder cell come through or lightning come through, they'll get up and we'll watch, and they'll try to observe and see where there might be a lightning strike to help out. But typically they're up there for a 24-hour shift, and they don't leave. They stay there the whole time. So let's talk about the hiring process, because that was a challenge we faced this last year, is the process. And typically what we do and how we hire and what the process is. And it is a process that we have to follow because they are state employees, part-time, seasonal, or full-time. There's a process that we're required to follow because of the state rules. So typically, and I wanted to say typically, I'm going to understand that it's just a snap in time. When's the best time to start? And we have to look at a lot of different things on where we're at with the hiring process. Because one is, and we'll talk about here in a minute, is the funding source. Where does the funding source sit now? And we'll talk about here in a second. CAL FIRE no longer staffs or funds the staffing of Lookout personnel. They stopped doing that in the early 2000s because of a lot of things we'll talk about here in a minute. So we have to look at what is the funding sources available. When's the most critical fire weather in Butte County? Those that have lived here for a while, when would you say the most critical fire weather is? Is it May and June, or would you say July, August, September, or August, September, October? Historically, it's been, July, August, September, or those later months, those fall months. We have everything's dried out now. We have those strong north winds, and that's when we're most critically going to have the critical burning periods and have the most damaging fires. So if we look across the board, our history says we had the most critical fires during that period of time. So anyway, we're getting ready to hire somebody. So typically we want to start about May 1st. We get the applications going, we request the information, we send it off to our region office. Region office takes the information, they put it through the Cal HR or to our state personnel component of hiring. They post the position on the internet on the VPOS, which is a vacant position database. So it goes on VPOS, that's what VPOS kind of stands for. People look at that over a period of 10 to 15 days. I'm interested in that job. They see if they meet the minimum qualifications. They turn their application in. Application is received and reviewed by the region office, and they say these are the candidates that meet the minimum qualifications that have sent one in. They have another period of time before that gets shipped over to our office. And we go, here's the candidates we have. We review that. We schedule interviews. We set a hiring time frame when we hire the individual. Now we have our individuals that work in that Sawmill in the Lookout. And then we take and we train them. And then they have to make sure they meet the physical and medical clearance requirements, because we're going to make sure that we're not buying somebody's back injury and treating them right. So we got to make sure that they meet the medical requirements for that position. And every position has a certain medical level they have to be able to clear before we can put them to work. So once that's done, we got them ready to go. We're shooting for that early to mid-July time frame, because we just talked about the critical time for us is July, August, September. We're going to shoot for that swing and get typically those 3 months of staff is what we're looking for. So that's our goal, is to do that kind of time frame. So we ran some challenges here, and a lot of you are aware of the challenges that we face, and it was well publicized in the paper. We're ignoring the needs. That was not the case. We were going through a process to get there, and we had some unknowns at the time. And some of the unknowns were, one is drought augmentation staffing. So our department went to the Department of Finance. We got additional funds to staff based on the drought conditions that were happening, not just in Butte County, but statewide. So statewide, we're faced with this major drought. So with that came, we need to staff fire engines. We need to get our crews. We need to get our bulldozers. We need to get our aircraft. We need to get our helicopters. All those pieces of the puzzle had to be staffed and brought up to an early level of staffing. So imagine trying to hire everybody at this early stage, and then the stack of paper of all these applications and interviews that had to go on, and all those kind of things that had to happen. And then lookouts were in there too. So it was a challenge to get all that. So it was a process to get all that through. On top of that, in early May, we had the funding source was just we knew what was in the Barron Ridge funding that they have raised, and the process we're going through that to clean that up. But the dollars that were there at the time, before we had the luxury of having PG&E come in and help out this year, was enough to do about a month and a half. So if we did a month and a half in May, we would have been done. We wouldn't have the staffing we really needed, because we just talked about the critical fire weather is the latter months. So we had that at the time. We didn't know how much funding we really had to meet that staffing and how long we can do that for. And then understanding the hiring process. And once we hire somebody, you can't just say, okay, I got you hired, but I'm going to wait 4 or 5 months before I really need you. I'll hire you back in July or in January, but I don't need you though until July or August. There's some state rules to get involved. Once you hire somebody, you got to kind of put them to work, at some point. So we have a 60-day window to get them to work. So we can't just hire them and then just kind of stick them to the side and wait till we really need them. So that, we got to kind of follow all those kind of little things along the way. So those are the challenges we faced. Augmentation was hiring up and down the whole state, and engines were a higher priority, and a lot of our needs at the time than lookouts. And then again, know the known funding at the time. We got to look at that. What's the best time to staff? And then the hiring process. So, let's talk about CAL FIRE and its funding. We just kind of mentioned a little bit. So, like I said earlier, no, we're no longer staffing the 77 lookouts that the state has access to up and down the whole entire state. They're no longer staffing those with personnel. They're still paying and maintaining them, and we still put people up there periodically based on critical fire weather. But a lot of it's due because of budget cuts and reduction in the early 2000s. So we had a big budget reduction then, and you had to kind of go, do I get rid of lookouts or do I get rid of fire engines? You know, what is the best thing to kind of manipulate around? And at the same time, you start looking, what's the best bang for the buck? What am I getting out of lookout staffing? So a lot of things have changed over time. Technology's improved, right? So we have more people living in rural areas. They're seeing more fires and reporting it via 911 through a cell phone. Cell phone connectivity is much better than ever it's been before, and getting better all the time. So they have that cell phone connectivity. Allows us to get more phone calls about fires or new incidents than a lookout did. And then more people are recreating in rural areas, so you got more people just visiting the rural areas. And then again, we're seeing new technologies, which we'll talk a little about here also. So what has been able to fund and keep Sawmill going since the state in the early 2000s stopped doing lookouts statewide, not just here in Butte County, but statewide? So some of the things we've been lucky with is some of us know about the Friends of Sawmill people. They've been actively involved in fundraising, and they help do that. This year they closed up shop, and now they're working. They have taken all their assets and they have came through to the Fire Safety Council as a mechanism for the Fire Safety Council as a nonprofit organization for us to accept those funds as a state agency. So that's how that works. PG&E this year, we're very fortunate to have PG&E come in and have some funds available through the Butte County Fire Safety Council to do some funding to get staffing up there and pay for staffing for a longer period of time. And also to do some repairs to the tower, which we'll talk about here in a minute, to Sawmill, and really made it more fortified. Hopefully for the future, we don't have any more damage up there. And then the Barrett Ridge. Barrett Ridge now is really the nucleus of the fundraising process. They're the ones that go out and do a lot of fundraising through different events. And those that don't know or haven't visited our website, the Barrett Ridge website, we hit the one at the bottom, please. They do have a lot of great benefits to be the mechanism for raising funds. The Butte County Fire Safety Council, which is a nonprofit organization, is a way to kind of accept the funds, and then that money then is then moved down to pay for the staffing that's available based on the funds raised to CAL FIRE to pay for that staffing, for that hired employee. So the money that's raised by Barrett Ridge is the staffing portion of it. The piece of it about the maintenance and ongoing things like that from other than PG&E helping out this year, in the future and in the past, is CAL FIRE still paying for all the maintenance. So we pay for the water, the propane, we pay for the tower to be maintained and painted when it needs it, those kind of things. But the fundraising that's done by Barrett Ridge pays for the personnel to be in that tower to help out for them. So Barrett Ridge has some different, there's different events. I don't know if can you go to the event tab? I'm just doing a little plug here for Barrett Ridge. You probably need to go up. I don't know if you can see it. Yeah, there's different events coming up. So if you haven't seen the webpage, go check it out. Everything they do, 100% of profit, goes into, right, Sharon? Goes to help the staffing of the lookouts. All right, thank you. So, like I said, CAL FIRE and the Butte unit, and our operating dollars of our Butte unit helps take care of that ongoing maintenance and repairs and pays for utilities. So it's kind of a shared dual role here. The state agency, as CAL FIRE, as we all know it, is no longer staffing personnel and funding personnel. So we have to come another mechanism. And luckily the community of Paradise and Upper Ridge has come together, not just this year, but since 2008 and earlier, when the state stepped down and saw value, they've been doing that. So the community is the one that's really been putting that lookout up there. So things we've been challenged with. This is just last year, and we probably had at least 3, I think we had, over the course of the year, if not 4, vandalisms that cost us repair money. We would fix it, and then within a couple months, it would look like this. So between doors being broken through, windows being broken or shot open, the stove, the hot water heater, all those little things that make it somewhat comfortable for the individual staying there for 24 hours were destroyed or stolen. So you put all this repair work into it, and then within a couple of months, it's all damaged again. So constant challenge. And I hope that what we've done this year will deter that for a while. But if you want to get into something and you're alone, people will figure out a way to do it. So what have we done? So over the past 5 years, I just took a 5-year survey of what we've invested in trying to repair that until this year. We spent over $17,000 in repair of our operating dollars that could have went to other things, but we had to spend money to get this up and running so that the money we had raised for staffing could put something in there and feel comfortable. Because imagine you're by yourself in the middle of the night sleeping, and somebody comes up and starts shooting or breaking in and wants to come to your door, because they won't know if you're there or not. Right? So we got to make some kind of security for the safety of the employee there as well. We were very fortunate again for PG&E and the Butte County Fire Safety Council to work together to provide funding to relocate the gate. We put it in some place. I hope that people won't be able to drive around. And if they do drive around, they're going to find a big trap and fall into it. So we'll hope that is going to deter people from driving up to the lookout. They may park at the gate and walk up, but they're going to have a hard time getting there, we hope. We updated some signage, a little bit about under surveillance and things like that. So you're being watched. Be careful what you're doing. Improved surveillance. So you guys can all read between the lines what improved surveillance means. We got an eye on that. Okay, we repaired the doors, the locks. We actually had an opportunity to repaint it. So hopefully all those things will make that a little bit more secure of a facility, and we don't go back from month to month to check on it and find it vandalized and destroyed. It's very prominent. Everybody can see it from Paradise. It's like, oh, look at that. It's like a shiny little object. Let's go drive over there and mess with it. So that's the challenge we find. So let's look at some of the historical data about Sawmill over the last 5 years. In its first reports, now, a first report means a lookout calls in before 911, before we get a fire report from a 911 phone call. Okay, everybody can understand that part? So in 2010, during that staffing period, there were 7 reports from the lookout calling in. And then probably within a very short time, and I could have found this out, I'm sorry. There probably wasn't a 911 phone call either. Simultaneously, you're right behind it. Okay, and then in 2011, same numbers. 2012, we had 3. 2013, we had 4. And this year, during a staffing period of almost 3 months, we had 1. 1 report by the lookout of a new fire. So I'm not saying this is bad news. I'm just saying look at the totality of what the lookout's providing us. It's offering us intelligence as well. So there's value there, but I'm going to stay here. As far as the first report of the fire, the 911 phone calls are outpacing the eyes looking down through binoculars during the daylight hours. Okay, so there's some information there more than anything. So digest that for a minute. So, what we've been doing and how we hope to continue doing, or what we're seeing here, what we're doing right now, is to continue staffing the Sawmill Peak Lookout. So, staffing sources, right now we just talked about Barron Ridge, and then through a nonprofit organization, the Butte County Fire Safety Council, typically for 3 months. And while we say 3 months, again, I refer back to the critical fire weather, and that the fire officials have the best opportunity to look at the critical fire weather, the funding available, the hiring process to get there, the security of the lookout, the repairs that have been done. This is the time period that's best suited to staff that lookout in the model we have right now. So that's kind of the goals and all those things we look at as we move forward to kind of make sure that we have it staffed properly. So CAL FIRE, what we do as far as staffing, when that's not going on, let's say early May, some crazy weather pattern comes in, and we have a north winds are blowing 50 miles an hour, it gets to be 90 degrees, and we're still in this kind of a drought, just coming out of the drought maybe, we're just still having critical fire weather. We have the authority to do a special staffing requirement. We can put a firefighter in any one of the lookouts we showed that map earlier and say, we want you to be here. We can staff 2 or 3 of them we had to because of that critical fire weather pattern. So we have the ability to staff a lookout anytime we want to based on fire weather conditions for that week, that day, that hour, whatever it might be. So we have that authority to do that. We're not paying for staffing, we're using emergency funds, and we're taking and request a special staffing number from our region office, And if the critical fire weather's there, the whole region's probably staffing something at some point. So it's not a challenge to do that, it's very easy to do that. We did it actually this year, where we're waiting for repairs and the hiring. We were doing staffing in June and early July, where we're waiting to get the staff. We staffed Bald Mountain using the firefighter lookouts and putting them up there, and they had a good view. We staffed Bloomer, the one in the south, for a little while. So we have that ability to do that on a day-to-day basis when there's critical fire weather. And then also, and that's where the Forest Service personnel are here, we have lookouts to the north and south of our county that report every morning with their staff to our command center. They report smokes to our command center and to their forest. So I'm going to ask them to come over and talk a little about the ones to the north and south, and they can describe their staffing and how that works. So whoever wants to talk about Colby first or Pike, either one, doesn't matter.
If I can figure out how this works, I think I can just do it from here. Okay, I'm Mike Holmes. I'm the Deputy Fire Management Officer for the Alaska National Forest. And you know what the deputy does? The Deputy Fire Chief does everything that the Fire Chief doesn't want to do, so that's a part of the reason I'm here tonight. But I do a lot of the administrative tasks at home, and I do the budget and those kinds of things. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the Alaska National Forest and just give you a little bit of an overview as to how we perceive and deal with our detection units, which is our lookouts. The Alaska National Forest has 6 lookouts. We're broken up administratively into 3 separate districts. We have the Eagle Lake District, the Hat Creek District, and the one you're probably most familiar with down over in this world, the Almanor Ranger District. And each one of those districts has 2 full-time lookouts. Well, not full-time as in year-round, but we've had those for quite a number of years. You know, once upon a time, the Forest Service probably, had a lookout on every corner, just like in the old days. It was probably a gas station on every corner. It was part of the deal where the actual lookout actually had a horse and a shovel, and when he spotted the fire, well, off he'd gallop and he'd go take care of that. Anyway, the modern days come to where we do aerial detection as well as ground-based detection from lookouts. And so we have 6 lookouts that we staff, 2 on each one of the districts. We have Antelope and Harvey Mountain at Eagle Lake. We have we have Burning Mountain, and we have West Prospect at the Hat Creek District, and at the Almanor Ranger District we have Colby Mountain, and currently we have Inskip Mountain, which is up on the Tehama unit. Colby Mountain's actually up in Tehama County, just north of the area of interest for this meeting. And it looks down in here, but primarily it looks out into the Ishii Wilderness and the area up north toward Mineral and the park, but it does command pretty good view down south here as well. What we get is a pretty much a unified allocation that our Region 5, that's California, uses, and it's pretty standard across the board what you'd expect on any forest as to how much money a certain piece of equipment is worth. It's kind of like a chessboard. Each one of the pieces has got a certain movement and a certain kind of a value. We get roughly $20,000 per lookout is all we really get. And the expectation from our region is that we staff during the fire season is what we're programmed for. It goes basically from May 1st to October 15th. And that's the money that we get. So, $20,000 for a lookout doesn't go very far. It's supposed to cover personnel costs, it's supposed to cover maintenance costs, it's supposed to cover all costs. And so you can see it really isn't much. We hire temporary firefighters, basically, for the summer months. These people cannot work full-time. They're limited to a number of hours. They can work basically up to 6 months a year on that type of appointment. So that fits in fairly well from about May 1st to the end of November. We can start them earlier, we can start them run them a little bit later. We do have some flexibility. But once we exceed that time frame, we have to look at some kind of other program dollars to subsidize that. Or we can get what we call severity dollars, where the region will request certain kinds of money because the fire season would augment that. Go ahead.
How many people do you have for each lookout?
Okay, yeah, we'll get to that here in just a minute. So that $20,000 to staff a lookout, we typically have, each district has 2 lookouts. So we usually hire 2 primary lookouts, one for each of the towers, and then we have basically a swing person that may cover both towers on the other person's day off. So typically we're hiring 3 temporaries to cover two lookouts. So, and, you know, a typical GS4 pay grade for a temporary employee is roughly $100 a day, $110, $120 a day is what it costs to hire and keep that person employed. So, you know, if you pencil that out, most of the money is going for personnel costs. And it's a real struggle for us to maintain the facilities. Lookouts are up high and in, you know, really extreme conditions. We've had, you know, well over hundreds of mile-an-hour winds in the winter that just kind of rip the hinges off of things. And so there's a lot of work that needs to be done every year. So if we're not using those things consistently year to year, it's a big investment for the output that you get. But, you know, we use those for detection. I mean, we also utilize, you know, aircraft as well. When we have a lightning bust, we will hire an engine or an airplane to basically do survey work over the countryside and report fires as well as lookouts. Like Chief McFadden also mentioned, we get most of our calls come in from the public or from 911, and what we're getting from the lookouts, it's kind of a niche market. It depends on where that lookout is. We also use those things for other things. It's not just primarily detection is what we use lookouts for. They're relay points. There's just an extra set of eyes out in the woods. They're part of our prevention program. And so they serve other functions as well. But their primary world is to live up there on that tower. And like our folks, as opposed to CAL FIRE, our folks work an 8-hour shift. Unless there's overtime to be had because the conditions warrant, because there's active fires or there's active lightning, they work 8 hours a day and then they're off. They can stay up there in the tower, we don't pay them for that, or they can go home at night. It's kind of their call. But that's all the expectation is that's the only time they have any visual, you know, picture of the countryside where they can give a real good descriptor of where that fire is. So like I said, we work our folks 5 to 6 months is pretty much where we're going to have our lookout. And it was about a year and a half ago when we had the Panther Fire up out of the Issue Wilderness. There was a petition from folks up around Butte Meadows. They wanted to see those lookouts come earlier. And so they called up and made some noise at the Forest Service office, and we responded to that. We were able to do that and to cover those things. So your voices do matter. We do listen to that, and we try to do those things based on conditions and improve the call. Yes, sir.
Great, thanks.
You want to hand about Steve? You talked about
Well, good evening. I'm Steve Miller, the Forest Fire Chief for the Coolidge National Forest, and between Greg and Mike, you stole a lot of my thunder. So the one I'll focus on is Pike Peak, Pike County Lookout. We have on the western end, the forest. Again, as Mike alluded to, our lookouts are staffed 7 days a week. They're going to come on usually, depending on the season. Sometime could be middle of May, sometime 1st of June, depending on the condition of the fire season. They're going to work all the way through till middle of October, end of October, somewhere there based on fire season. And some of these lookouts are focused on here at lower elevations. A lot of our lookouts are up at the 7,000 feet elevation, where depending on the snow load for the year, it may be later in the year where we actually have a chance to get them up there and get them into place, depending on that snow load we have for that year. And the higher elevation lookouts for us, it's real good. Is regularly to 911 is very good, but also when we get the lightning that comes through. A lot of it will be in the wilderness or whatever else where those lookouts are very valuable. Those are kind of our set of eyes and ears as we look over some of that country. But again, a lot of the thunder's already been stolen from that, and you guys did a really good job with that. So.
Thank you both very much. Mr. Strick, BLM, I don't think BLM really serves this area, but just an update on where their lookouts are. Appreciate it.
Is this on? Yes, it is. Hello, everyone. My name is Jeremy Strike from the Reading BLM Field Office. And I just thank you for having me here tonight. I'd like to basically provide some lookouts here in the valley, but unfortunately, the Bureau of Land Management has lookouts that serve Modoc and Lassen counties. In fact, when at Observation Peak, Fredonia, and Yellow Peak. But basically, our field office here is up as well. Is our BLM lands from Waimika down to about Lake Oroville. The Reading field office are CAL FIRE has a DPA for those lands, so they have otherwise we'd have about several hundred scattered parcels to try to manage, so thank you for that.
Great, thank you. DPA, what's DPA?
Pardon me, SRA, DPA, it's a state protection area or direct protection area. Bureau of Land Management has DPA generally, such as in Susanville, Alturas, other counties throughout the state.
So that'd be the agency in charge of that area. So CAL FIRE does a lot of your lands out here in our neck of the woods.
Correct.
Okay. Great.
Doing agreement.
Thank you, Mr. Nick.
Yeah, a lot of terms like LRA, SRA, DPA, FRA, their LRA is local responsibility area, SRA, state responsibility area. Then through cooperative agreements, a lot of Tehama County is in our DPA direct protection area. You know, it's Tehama County, but we're closer resources, so closest resource concept, get there as soon as you can, put the fire out. And FRA, federal responsibility area. So those are terms that are thrown out a lot in our fire family that we're very familiar with. But sometimes like, what the heck is that?
I just wanted to add, when we started this discussion about Sawmill, the lookout, when I first got wind I was coming down here to talk about it, I went and looked at our maps and I thought, okay, what's the issue here? And it became pretty apparent that it gets a little fuzzy because Sawmill Peak actually sits on a piece of Lassen National Forest property, but it's administratively serviced by the Plumas National Forest, and it's in Butte County CAL FIRE direct protection area. So there's a lot of fingers in this pie. You know, Lassen National Forest was made by a congressional act, the boundaries. So instead of giving it away to somebody else, say the Plumas, we just hand them over the ability to administer that section of ground for us. So even though it sits on the Lassen, the Plumas National Forest is the land manager for Sawmill Peak, and then CAL FIRE gets to take care of the fire protection on that piece of ground.
Thank you.
Thanks, because I was just going by our lease agreement, it said Plumas, so now we know the whole story.
It's government, it's messy.
So where we moved to here recently with some funding sources through PG&E and the Yankee Hill Fire Safe Council, we're going to kind of jump to another Fire Safe Council. So where the technology is moving, I bring David Hawks up here in a minute to talk a little bit more detail about it, because once we had the availability to kind of look at this technology for Butte County, we were like, we're going to go for it, because this is the wave of the future. It's 24/7, 365 days a year, day and night time, intelligence gathering that will make us more efficient at our job as fire officials are responding. So we were very fortunate to be recipients of that through the Butte County Fire Department. I'm going to say Butte County Fire Department. We'll talk why that happened a little bit. So the funding or providing the material was provided by it wasn't so much the funding so much, well, kind of funding, but it was the purchase of the cameras were provided by PG&E, a for-profit organization, donated to a non-profit organization, the Yankee Hill Fire Safe Council, which is the CONCAL group, and donated to Butte County Fire Department. So kind of like that Sawmill thing, you know, a bunch of different people all involved. But in order to accomplish this, that's what we had to do to get through the system. Because the state agency can't accept gifts or donations of funds from a for-profit organization. There's no mechanism for that. And they're like, well, what are we going to do? So we had to find a way to make this work, because we see a value in the camera technology and the advancement of using technology to our advantage. So that was kind of the avenue we had to negotiate. And David was the negotiator. And he made this thing work. He worked hard to make it happen. And that was his piece. That was the easy part. The hard part was where they're going to go and the approval to get them on where we want to put them. That was the other hurdle they had to go through. So, again, I kind of said, donate to the Butte County Fire Department. It's to improve our intelligence gathering. We need to know when there's a report of a fire, is it valid? Is it a full response or a modified response? Is it just a cloud? Is it a water vapor? If a lightning source is coming through and it's passed on, we can focus the cameras in those areas for a period of time. And the smallest little bit of smoke comes up, hey, we got early detection or early intelligence gathering, so we can go out there and check that fire out. So again, 24/7 availability, it's always looking day or night, always giving us a view. I'm not going to tell you. So the cameras are located in strategic locations throughout Butte County. In eastern foothills, we have north, the middle, and the south cover. Now, the reason I'm not going to tell you because I don't want people to go up there and mess with the cameras. If they know where Sawmill is, look what happened to Sawmill. Now we have technology that's not cheap, and we don't kind of protect them as best we can, then we just risk of losing that in a very short period of time. We don't want that to happen. So it is proven technology. It has worked in other countries and other states. The state north of us, Oregon, has, I think, up to 30 of these cameras in places, and they oversee through the Oregon Department of Forestry and several of the land owners of logging timber companies have put this technology up. And the unique thing about them, they have it all centralized to one intelligence gathering location. So all the cameras report to one contractor, and that contractor reviews all the monitors and goes, hey, this forest has something going on, and relays the information to them to let them know what's happening. So it's been around for a while, and we're just now having an opportunity to see this technology come into Butte County. So I'm going to kind of let David, who's really more technically advanced in this technology, and explain it a little bit more.
Okay, good evening. Again, my name is David Hawks. I'm a Division Chief in the North Division for CAL FIRE, Butte County Fire, also Paradise Fire Department. So the camera technology, basically what you have from this pic, yeah. So you have the camera located on a spot, and again, we have cameras located in the north, central, and south part of Butte County. And those cameras provide basically a 360-degree panorama view of the horizon. They use presets, and I think actually the next slide will talk a little bit about that. What the cameras do is they take a video feed, a constant video feed of the horizon as they pan around from their presets. That video feed comes into what's called an image sampling engine, and that image sampling engine picks out still shots from that video feed and then sends specific still shots to in this particular case where this system was established was up in Canada. They sent it to a constant or a central detection system. In our case, we're not sending it to there. It goes from an image sampling engine to our dispatch center in Orville, emergency command center was referred to. In the command center in Orville, there's a computer, and what that computer does is it looks at those images and it pans that image for smoke. Basically, the system, there's an algorithm that is set to detect smoke. That's way beyond my ability to comprehend, but it works. And you'll see from the next couple slides. It also works at night, which is kind of neat, and we'll show a slide on that too. So once it picks up a smoke, then it will send an alert to the dispatchers from there. Okay, there's one picture of one of our cameras on a site in the county, and as you can see, they look pretty much like a traffic camera. This particular site has two cameras. It has one on one side of the building and one on another side, and it provides 180 on each side, 180 degrees on each side of the building for a 360 panorama. That's another picture of a camera on a communications tower. So you get a little idea what they look like. Okay, so wildland cameras, they provide a 360-degree panorama from each location. They can provide early fire intelligence in the eastern foothills of Butte County. So what we can use, the other nice thing about them, not only they provide alert for our emergency dispatchers, but we as chief officers in CAL FIRE will have log-on capability to a website that will allow us to view what the camera's picking up. And so then we can look at that and say, you know, this fire doesn't appears to be building, or we can make decisions based upon what we see from the pictures that will help us in modifying our response to the incidents. Okay, cameras will be set at each location. They do preset views. They scan different preset views of the horizon. Cameras function again 24 hours a day, and they work at night. And each site uses a microwave, so that the image gets sent from the image sampling engine to our dispatch center is through microwave communication, basically cellular communication from one microwave to another microwave, and then it's received at that other microwave and is converted to the internet or put into the internet and then run to our dispatch center via the internet. Okay, this particular picture is a similar camera. It's not one of our detection cameras, but this is the big fire that occurred on Big Bend Road in the Yankee Hill area on September 9th this summer. And that's not the initial pictures from that camera. That's well into the fire, so it's a little bit larger than what you would normally see from the first report of the camera. This particular camera is a Yankee Hill Fire Safe camera. It's owned and operated by the Fire Safety Council for the community to view. But it's the same exact image that we would see from our camera. Okay. The Emergency Command Center, the monitoring computer will alert dispatchers to potential for smoke. I mentioned that. Dispatcher can then take a view of the photograph and take control of the camera and actually view the photograph to get an idea if it actually is a smoke or if it might be hanging moisture. A lot of times after we have thunderstorms in the summertime, we'll have hanging moisture in the canyons, and sometimes they can be picked up, or it could be a dust cloud. And it's pretty prominent, especially in the summertime, obviously, with logging operations or blasting that goes on in different quarries and what have you. Okay, the alarm, the computer window contains specific information, and we'll see a slide here in a little bit about that, but it provides date, time, provides the camera, the bearing, the camera was looking, the azimuth, if you will. The camera was looking when it picked up smoke, and most importantly, it provides latitude and longitude. And the latitude and longitude is the computer back in the dispatch center actually is a GIS platform. And so what it does when it picks up that latitude and longitude, it will snap it to a lat long on a GIS platform. And what that means for you and for everybody else is that we can get that latitude and longitude and put that into our CAD dispatching system. And then we have, in theory, the point of the fire, exact point of the fire for dispatching resources. The other nice thing is on Google Earth, you can click right on it and it will take you right to that location. You can see a Google Earth image, and we'll see that in a minute. Latitude, I just mentioned that. Okay, the nighttime images, dispatcher prepare daytime images of the area to the night image to determine features around the incident. We'll talk about that actually. So that actually is is a picture of our dispatch center in Orville that Bruce Hassett is the ECC chief there, and that's the system there. And what you're looking at is in the top 3 screens are a panorama view of one of the cameras. So there's a total of 12 different still images from that same camera on the panorama. So you're looking, right here is 6 across the top and then 6 more. There's 12 images. And then down here is a picture of the camera, and you can actually pull that up and then get the specific information on that particular screen. Okay, this picture was taken from Oregon. They gave me logon rights, and I went in there and looked at some of the stuff that they had detected on a lightning siege that they had in late July up there. And this is what you would see. So this is a fire, and obviously this is a well-established fire. It's not the initial report. It's pretty good size. You see the little, it alerts with a little box around it, sends a signal, and then it also puts, this is Google Earth that we're looking at, puts the image on a map. And right down here is the latitude and longitude. There's actually another screen that provides all that information up here. But this particular picture, the latitude and longitude is provided right there. This is what it looks like at night. So at night, daytime, you have the daytime image of that particular area, and then a nighttime infrared. So you can see the fire glow there and the smoke casting up. System benefits. While most fires are reported by phone, and Chief McFadden mentioned that, by far, the vast majority of our incidents are reported by cellular callers, without a doubt. Cameras can provide some detection, and equally important or more so, they provide the ability to gather intelligence, to actually look at what's going on, make a determination if the fire is developing rapidly or if it's not developing. We can make adjustments, like I said, to our dispatch. Cameras provide a photographic history to be used for investigation. It's important in investigation world in law enforcement to gain an early snapshot of what's going on out there. Even though this is a remote camera snapshot, that early detection is important for fire investigation. Butte County Fire Chiefs, again, I mentioned that will have log-on abilities to go in and view the what's going on with the fire.
So, where do we go from here? We gave you some of where we were in the old days, where staffing and funding is provided us now, and where camera technology is stepping into our community this year, and luckily we have that. So how do we move forward and find the best mechanism to provide the best intelligence gathering and view from our lookouts? So no, nothing's decided. We're not here to decide that. We're just throwing some things out there, some ideas. That's all we're doing here tonight.
So Greg, mind if I jump in one second?
Sure.
This technology is really neat, and it's really kind of cutting edge stuff. We also have purchased 2 cameras for our lookouts, and jumping on board the same thing. And the vision for us is take it one step farther and have it actually come to our iPads, which Ryan has in front of us, for our chief officers, so they can have real-time information when they're out in the field. So again, it's really good technology, and we're also jumping on board the same thing.
Yeah, this is not just us having it. We can communicate to each other's dispatch center. We can share the information. Hey, my camera's picking up this. We triangulate. We'll really be able to network very, very well. In the process, you heard all that talk about the process. It happens like that fast. It's like a cell phone. Your phone rings and it's there. So it's not. It takes time. You got to pull it up. You got to study it. It's instantaneously happening. So it's very cool technology. We're very thankful to be having it. So where do we go from here? Like I said, technology's here in front of us. We continue the current model. Continue using community-based fundraising and to provide staffing. We continue to hire the seasonal CAL FIRE employee to put up there for that period of time based on the available funds, based on the critical fire weather, based on the hiring process that we have to follow through the state system. Or we look at volunteer staffing. We look at, do we put volunteers and use volunteers of prevention, a VIP program that CAL FIRE has, that we have VIPs in our unit already to help with educational programs and fairs and do different public events. They help us do those kind of events now. So, but, it takes training and a commitment, because if we're going to start the process, we got to make sure we have a continuous pool of people that want to be able to do that and be able to drive out there remotely, get there safely, and do those kind of things. So I'm not saying it's not, you can't do it, but it's just, you got to be committed to do that. And we have, like I said, the VIP program is a good fit for that kind of a move. Or we just start looking at, there it comes. So we start looking at what we just saw as an enhancement to the Paradise Magalia Ridge area. Do we look at camera technology to supplement or replace Sawmill staff looking, and we have something that's 365 days a year, 24/7, and it's available. So we need to figure out what is the best location, because personally, and I think the fire officials in here would agree, if we put it on top of Sawmill Peak, it wouldn't be there very long. Because it's too visible. Too many people see it, know it's there, and I think it'd be vandalized or stolen or shot off there before you know it. So we got to find what's the best location to put something of that nature to do that. And then we got to work on how we're going to purchase that and ongoing maintenance of it. So there's still those kind of mechanisms we got to look at. But for now, we're into understanding that we have our neighboring Forest Service to the north and south of us that have a staffing period that might be a little bit longer because they have a funding source. We have the ability to staff on critical fire weather, any lookout we need to, based on our availability need to do that because of critical fire weather coming in. And that we have that authority any time of the year we need to do that based on fire weather. We have the current staffing model now where we fundraise through the Barron Ridge or anybody else wants to use that mechanism to the Fire State Council to allow CAL FIRE to have the funds to be able to hire somebody. And we also have, on top of that, we're going to have this next year, we're going to have the camera technology that is going to give us another view of what's happening. We're going to have that technology at most of our sites 365 days a year. So we have a lot of intelligence gathering devices, both human and using technology out there available for us right now. And we're just advancing it every year. We're getting better and better at it. So that's kind of a snapshot of what I have. I think we're going to throw the map up there one more time for everybody to look at. We're going to take some questions on this subject. And if there's any other subject, we'll probably move on. But if we want to talk about this in itself, we can get back up on the panel here. Do you want us to?
Yeah, I think that would be good. But first, thank you very much, Chief McFadden.
I'll move this out of the way because it's kind of in the way.
So I have a microphone here, we have one there. So if anyone has a question related to the lookout, we'll go with Sharon first.
Hey, Greg. If we chose to not staff Sawmill Peaks per se with human beings, and we went with this camera technology, what's the cost of maintaining that? And would that be funded by CAL FIRE, or would that be something that a community would have to fundraise for? Oh, David. Hi, David.
Hello, Sharon. The cost of, well, first off, the first part of your question, the cost of the camera to maintain it through EnviroVision, which is a company out of Oregon, would be about $3,000 a year is what they charge to maintain each camera site. And then in addition to that, we are in a agreement with Digital Path, which I want to throw a little shout out for them. They've done a tremendous job of helping us get this technology here. They've donated quite a lot of time and labor to the project and also some of their resources. And so they're the ones that carry the internet feed. And they're also the ones that are keeping our communications links, the little microwave communications links from site to site up and working for us. So I'm going to estimate there'd be another $1,000 for an additional site.
So about $4,000 you're estimating?
In maintenance, yeah. Once the camera's there, the cost to put those cameras in, I couldn't give you that off the top of my head. I'm going to get back to you.
Okay, yeah, and then Greg mentioned too that if we put it on top of the peak, of course, you know, somebody's going to either shoot it down or go up there and take it. Is there any obscured area that we could still get the panoramic view without being so accessible to vandalism?
I think that that's something to research. I think that there probably is.
Okay.
The short answer is yes, I believe so.
Thank you.
Sharon, one more thing real quick. Just on the funding of the maintenance is shared right now with Butte County Fire. We've talked also with John Concerning Shop in the county OES department, and then also I think we're working a little bit with Yankee Hill Fire Safety Council. So we're sharing that right now, and we're looking for more partners. But it's not a CAL FIRE sponsor. Just understand, this is Butte County Fire Department. They've been donated to the Butte County Fire Department through all the mechanisms we got to where we are now. And it's a tool available for us to use in our command center as a county fire.
So this would just be a small portion of a big,
Right.
Another element of it.
where you're getting one bill for all of it, and you would be
Right.
part of that.
Anyone else? Oh, wait a minute. I'll get right to you.
First of all, thank you for the presentation. It was very well presented. What is the backup plan for when conductivity fails? Anyone with a cell phone knows weather and all sorts of things interfere with signals. Do we have a Google balloon in place? I mean, what sort of backup plan is there?
Geez, I seem to be getting called on off the line here. Backup plan in terms of backup for cellular or backup for the cameras?
If connectivity fails, like Digital Path's link goes down,
That is, well, again, we have a maintenance agreement with Digital Path, so they would go out there and repair it, but there would be some downtime, no question about it, just like any other technology.
If that situation would arise, and it's during critical fire period, we would put a human up in one of our lookouts during that critical fire period. We're going to take care of putting people in and getting that intelligence gathering one way or another during those periods of critical fire weather, while the repairs are being done.
That's an excellent answer, thank you.
The question is, just what's the range of these cameras? It looks like they're doing, what, 30, 40 miles?
Camera range is about 15 miles with good accuracy, and then depending upon the clarity of the skies, could be greater than that. They're overlapping right now at that range.
Thanks, Lauren, for meeting me halfway there.
Great presentation, thank you. Two questions. One is, are there any use of drones in the fire service at this point? The fixed cameras are great, but drones I thought would be great. Spotters, remote areas.
Why drones are great technology. We had, I can just tell you, relate a story that happened on one of our incident command team fires down in El Dorado County. Earlier this year, a drone was flying around, a private drone, wasn't something we were using as, and it interfered because of elevation. It interfered with the aircraft that we're flying, because we're flying at low elevations trying to take care of the fire. So there's still a lot of studies or whatever to determine whether drones, those personal drones that you can go down and buy at the hobby shop, will really be a benefit to our organization. Now, we do have the ability to use, through a request order through the military, to use drones for surveillance at a high altitude to take shots at night for infrared reading to find out where hot spots are on a large fire. But to use drones as a daily tool, we're not there right now.
Okay, thank you. And I have one more question, please, while I have a mic. When funds are raised to pay for personnel, why do you still have to go through the whole process, the Cal State process, instead of just hiring someone, basically, that would be a quicker process, maybe cheaper?
Because right now we're using a state position, so we're using that seasonal fire position, which is recognized as a position in our state organization, in our Cal Fire's organization. So because it's a state employee, even though it's only part-time or 3 months or limited terms, we call them, or for the season, that's the hiring guidelines where we have to follow under the state rules.
Okay, so it's not based on the funding, but the actual position.
Right.
Thank you.
I'm right behind you.
Anyone else?
So of the options that you showed up there, one was volunteers. What would happen with the volunteer positions then? Would they have to go through the same hiring process?
No, we would have to, there's a much more local control of that at a selection process, and then training process, and there's a little bit more local control of that than having to follow the state personnel hiring guidelines.
So it could be a lot faster process.
Potentially, yes.
This is for Jim Nielsen. Do you think that there might be a time when, soon, hopefully, that the state would be stepping in and saying, okay, if this is new technology, why don't we just simply pursue having one hat covered? And so that instead of all these different agencies trying to mix and match and so on, just one fund that would provide statewide for all needs, for all cameras, for all regions within California. Do you think that is in the works possibly?
Well, I think what you've seen here, and in my experience in fire safety and in law enforcement, everything depends on a whole lot of different areas of cooperation. Because there are so many entities necessarily involved, state, federal, local, volunteer, professional. And I don't envision there ever being just a one-stop shop for all of what we're talking about here today. I don't see that as being possible. I can see the state and the federal government doing better jobs unto themselves. And very much what this is all about, this dialogue that we're having here, is developing better levels of cooperation among everybody. But I don't ever see that there's just going to be one entity that does everything. It's going to always have to be a lot of cooperation. In this particular case, CAL FIRE is doing these cameras. But that's all being done in cooperation with everybody else. And sometimes the U.S. Force is going to be doing something on their own. But if that be the case, it will always be, in my opinion, and these professions always work that way, to the highest degree that they integrate and cooperate. It's not independent, a world unto themselves. The success that we enjoy with all of these professions of fire safety and our police protection and sheriffs is because they cooperate and work together. And I think that's going to be continuing to be the model. Each can do a better job of themselves, but it always has to be integrated.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else on the fire related? Get this gentleman and we'll get
get right to you.
As I understand, you said there was only one fire that was first detected by Sawmill Peak lookout staff in 2014. So were the rest detected by the camera? And what do you call that camera?
No, the camera technology is brand new. It hasn't even gone online yet. You're seeing just some study, not study, but as you're bringing it online, those are some screenshots you saw on the PowerPoint. But the camera technology is new to us in the Butte County Fire Department. So it's not something we have, just came online October 28th, roughly around the end of October. But as far as looking at records and going back and looking at the CAD data, for first reports of fires, yes, 2014 Sawmill reported one fire. Now, there were more fires than that, obviously, in the area, but the rest were reported through local or 911 emergency phone call into our command center.
Good evening. I got a couple of questions here. We go way back to the start of the program. You said the first lookout tower was up in 1907 or something. What kind of communications did they have to notify somebody? Also, another question you sort out. When you put these cameras up, would it pay to put extra protection around these cameras so they can't be vandalized?
I have no idea. First part of your first question, I don't know how they communicate. I imagine was a mirror reflector or smoke signal, something like that.
I think it
there wasn't much out there then.
I think it was stated they hopped on a horse with their shovel and went to town.
And that was a concern. We, not only from human vandalism, but from the elements and weather. So those are all things we are concerned about. And you're right, and that's one reason we're not saying exactly where they're located at. We hope it will get out eventually. It is going to happen. But we'll do our very best to monitor that, and we'll do our very best to secure them as best we possibly can. Hopefully they're in areas where you're going to have a very hard time getting up on that communications tower. It's very secured around it very, very well. And there's, like the lookout tower, Sawmill Lookout, there's surveillance. There might be surveillance in these watching to see who's coming around tampering. So we're going to do our best, and we will continue to monitor that so we hopefully don't have an issue.
Let me add something to this camera thing too, because I've had quite a career in law enforcement myself. And there's an aspect of this that I find important. It's not our purpose here to be talking about this particular aspect of it, but it has an application. Because now, increasingly, in our forests and wildlands in America, in California, and in Butte County, we have a lot of criminal activity going on. And the presence of these cameras are helpful in that regard. And I want to thank you all, too, by the way, for, I think we were probably more generally in accord on Propositions A and B up here in Butte County. And that was a very significant victory. But my point is, there are a lot of things that are happening out in our forests and wildlands, and these cameras are helping us keep an eye on some of that.
Let me just add that, we have all of these separate agencies, and we've had them for a long time, Forest Service, BLM, all of us work separately, but we've learned over the years rather well how to work in shared commands when we need to. So I have a hope that we can, at some point, work together in kind of this shared environment that you talked about. I think that Oregon operates similar to that with all of these cameras across. So we might have lots of people with lots of different money buying different stuff, but we can get this together. We know how to work together rather well, and we've done that with major wildfires and just shared command between these different agencies. So we ought to be able to share this too. We might not be there yet, but we ought to be able to figure out a way. This new technology.
I just wanted to throw in something that kind of echoes what Earl has to say. We have a lookout up on Turner Mountain, which is just south of Mineral off of Highway 36. And it's been condemned. It's a historic building where we find that we can't fix it up to make it habitable and usable. So a few years ago, the Alamo Ranger District got into a little bit of a cooperative deal with the Tehama Glen pay to staff in-skip lookout. We put the lookout up there instead of up at Turner. So it was a benefit to us to utilize somebody else's lookout tower. I don't know if it's the same situation here, but those are the kind of cooperative deals and things that we need to be exploring and talking about.
We're working all the time to try to learn how to play together.
I'd just like to say, I'd like you to consider, when we're talking about vandalism in the woods, and especially around Sawmill Peak and places like that, it doesn't help when everybody goes along with locking up the roads, because what happens is the responsible citizens no longer got eyes on the forest. And when you do that, you've got exactly what you have. You've got people locked out, and that's why Concal has the big pot growing, as you alluded to. And that's why that stuff's there, is because basically the county and the state has allowed SP and other people to put up gates and lock up long-established roads, and thereby the public can't get in, and those of us that are responsible, that would be eyes on the system and could call you, are locked out, because of course we don't bypass the fences and gates when you put them up, because we believe in obeying the law. But the criminal, remember, the criminal doesn't care. They just go on in. So you lose a lot by locking them up. I'd just like to give you that information.
Mr. Levine.
The downside of that, that's a really good comment, and having those eyes on the forest are really good. The downside of criminal activity with pipe growing is folks' safety too. We have those areas when we know that something is going on, we don't even send out people out there until law enforcement can clear the area. So I hear you, and we appreciate that, because we have ranchers and folks out there that call us all the time about people in the forest at night in those lights, and that's the same 911 kind of concept. But it's not as, there are also some concerns that we have to have for folks' safety.
Just as a follow-up, cell phones do work at Sawmill Peak and over the other side of the hill, so people could actually report on their cell phone. Thank you.
I have two questions to follow up on what Senator Nelson had mentioned as far as as far as the public safety applications of the cameras in criminal matters. Number one, is there an omniscient 24-hour feed that's taken and stored as well, a video feed that can track fires, development, as well as possible vandalism or other activities? And also, what is the current scope plan for the use of these cameras by the county law enforcement, as we haven't heard from the sheriff's representative yet? Thank you.
I certainly can't speak to that. I don't know that we've got anybody.
I'm not sure that camera technology will get that zoomed in, that kind of a picture, but I'll let the sheriff speak to it.
Well, this being the first I heard of the cameras up in the forest, I can let you know that we're not tuned in to monitoring activity right now. If something comes up in the future, I'm sure, but this looks like it's set up specifically to find areas of smoke. We work cooperatively with the Forest Service when it comes to marijuana eradication in the National Forest System. We receive funding. We help out for criminal activity that occurs in the forest. But I'm unaware of any plans to try to use these cameras to monitor whether it be citizens or criminals. It looks like from the cameras you're seeing the smoke that comes up. To see the underbrush underneath the canopies of the trees, I think would be next to impossible.
And there is one camera that the Yankee Hill Fire Safe Council has that has a feed available to the public. So you could see the resolution of what that camera does on that site. And I don't know if we have that. It's on their webpage, Yankee Hill Fire Safe Council.
One way you can get to that link is through the Fire Safe Council's website, and that's www.thenet, 411thenet, something to.
Right.
Then you can get all of the councils and be able to look at their information.
Did everyone hear that? Sorry, I should have ran over there and gave them a mic. If you're curious to the Yankee Hill Fire Safe, how to get to their camera, a web page, you can always ask Robin at the end of the meeting. So we'll leave it at that. Yes,
The
ma'am.
card's on the table at the back.
It's on the back of this, Doug.
Say that again. Oh, it's on
back
the
of the new brochure.
Oh, great, there's a brochure in back too. Thank you.
Evaluate the cameras cost? I mean, if they.
Yes. Yeah, I can find that out. I have that in my office, I just don't have it off the top of my head. I mean, I have that only from the total package of the cameras that we installed.
We paid about,
Oh, you have no idea?
Well, no, the camera head itself is like $3,000, but there's wiring, there's install, there's ISN sampling, there's a number of components. If I was to take a ballpark figure, I would say probably $25,000 for a camera set.
For one camera?
Yeah, to get it installed.
Okay.
we paid a little less than that. I think the cost of the cameras were right, and that's why I was asking the question. We put 2 up for $15,000.
We haven't got full, we have been in the process.
So that's about $7,500 each, including all of that equipment. Then you enter maintenance and all of the other stuff. So it gets up there, and Mr. Parker's we're gonna share information about what our costs are.
Make sure Joe.
Well, in light of the fact that the cameras seem like a great idea, preventative measures, why isn't there a state fund? Why does things of this importance have to be funded by fundraising? Why aren't there state funds or county funds available for this type of technology?
I don't have an exact answer for you for that. This is new territory for us as an organization, and it would take a lot of funding to do this statewide. And so if it was $75 or $100,000 just for this little Butte County, what's going to cost up and down the whole entire state? I can't say it. We won't see this in the future, and that might become, but you got to go through a lot of control agencies, Department of Finance, budget change proposals, all those kind of things. I'd say change is a process, not an event. So it's a process to get through there, and change is I welcome change. I welcome technology, and I'm sure we'll see there someday. But I'm just taking the opportunity we have in front of us right now for us as a local county fire department to accept this, and we're going to move forward.
I can answer the county budget side of that, is why doesn't the county fund that? We have our own budget problems. There's a lot of state mandates that funding doesn't come with it. There's money owed by the state and the federal agencies, not the Forest Service agencies, but that they haven't paid us back. It's payment in lieu of taxes that we haven't got. The Williamson Act, the county is propping up what the state took away on paying for the Williamson Act. Our sheriff department has a hiring problem, and we can't afford to pay for this because we have these other issues. And I know that's a horrible answer to tell you, but we have a funding problem. And I appreciate the community involvement, because a lot of things wouldn't be getting done if it wasn't for the community. So, will the state's fiscal house get fixed? Will the federal house get fixed? Because all that trickles down to the county. And it's a real challenge. And I'm not going to make an excuse for the county not being able to pay for this, but that's the reality we're in right now.
Well, I'm happy to grab on to that, because I'm kind of the budget guy in the legislature. And there's a trend going on, folks, that's not a good one. And it's the state of California trying to dump more and more responsibility on local government and all of the citizens. Responsibility that you've already assumed through paying the many state taxes that you pay. And one of those examples is the fire tax. Now, we're not going to have to get into that too much here tonight. We can talk about it if you want. But that's a classic example of shifting what has been formerly a state general fund responsibility, a general responsibility of the state, down to local government or others. Local government has had to suffer that for years and years and years. And by the way, I'm the author of the Williamson Act, and I know what's going on with that. That's the least onerous of the burdens that have been shifted. And there's a lot of things that you citizens can do, and we should do, to make sure that that trend doesn't continue. It's happening worse in the area of public safety, and I think most of you are very well aware of my position on that issue. But it does complicate things. Now, getting to the question of this technology being employed and being a budget priority, I'll assure you the Department of Finance would never support anything like that, in my opinion. But if there's enough sympathy amongst the people, like you are organized here, and you feel that that is of value, and in the budget deliberations, I can bring these things up and say that I find value, and I've seen how they've been of effective use in the cooperation between all of us. And that gives me what I call some bullets for the gun to shoot and argue for these things as being budget priorities. But keep in mind, the overriding goal of government today is to get rid of more responsibilities from government and shift it to lower levels of government. Unfortunately, that doesn't come with a greater efficiency and a reduction of spending, does it? No, the spending is going to continue at the state level. So whatever we've dumped on local government, that doesn't mean that commensurately brought down the spending. The Department of Corrections now has got some 40,000 fewer inmates and 10,000 more coming your way because of Prop 47. But for the budget of the Department of Corrections did not go down. It went up. Now that's a whole other problem, folks. It's not our real subject matter here today, but it's one that I love talking about because I'm passionate about it.
And we can always have a town hall that would address those issues. I'm always game to have town halls. I really enjoy them. Thank you, sir.
Where has this camera technology been used? How long has it been used? And has someone evaluated the success of these camera programs? I came late, so maybe you discussed that earlier.
Yeah, the camera technology has been used in Australia, South Africa, Canada, and Oregon, off the top of my head. I don't know how many years, but it's been at least a few that it's been used in Oregon. In fact, you may be able to address that because you came from Oregon, correct?
I came off the east side of Oregon, and it wasn't used as much there. However, my last fire, my last district, we actually brought in a portable camera because it was a really bad spot for my firefighters. We didn't want them down in there. We used that similar technology to keep an eye on that fire while it burned through so we wouldn't put our firefighters at risk. And it worked very, very well. You could actually manipulate it and get real-time data and see what's going or not. So it's great technology. It is not only from the standpoint of public safety, but also for firefighter safety. So it's a win-win for us.
Anyone else?
I encourage you to take a look at that technology for your own personal property. We have cameras on our property for personal security reasons of our family, and that is available. It's a little bit costly, but not beyond means. And I find it to be very helpful in our own family security.
Good evening, gentlemen. Thank you for coming. You put on an amazing presentation, and it's been a pleasure speaking to you. And the questions I have are more in the matter of clarification. The first one is, do the various technologies communicate with each other that all you gentlemen are using? Or do they have to go through a central dispatcher and then get sent out? And the reason I'm asking that is I thought one of the things with the incident command system and all that was all these new communications were supposed to communicate with each other, but then the New Mexico volunteer firefighters, didn't 14 of them die because there was because the communication did not overlap and communicate with each other? The systems did not work together? That's the first question, and you can answer that one first.
In our command center, our CAD system communicates with the Red Bluff TGU, so the unit to the north of us, and their direct CAD-to-CAD communication, and also to the south of us in the Grass Valley, so the Valley of the Placer unit. So our CAD system does talk to each other's CADs. So if we were to put those Latin longs in based on camera technology and it happened to be in Tehama County, we would put the Latin long in our CAD system and then shoot it right to them right then, and they'd be able to dispatch. So we have that technology within our organization. But we're also connected very quickly with a low-band radio, so we just call each other, pick up a phone. We have direct phone lines to each other's dispatch centers, to the Plumas, the Lassen National Forest, to the sheriff, to the EMS, to the CHP. We do communicate daily, and all incidents and all types. So we have a very good communication network that does work.
Thank you. And then, I guess you kind of danced around this a little bit, but can CAL FIRE use its own drones for fire observation and stuff? Can CAL FIRE, if they choose, use their own CAL FIRE drones to observe any fire in practice?
I'm not aware of any drones that we have in our organization.
Is there a possibility of having them in the future?
The technology advancements, again, that would be something I have to go through.
So
all the
there's
control agencies.
nothing to stop you from having them and using them, but it's private ones that got in the way. But you could use your own if you ended up with the technology.
I'm sure in some time in the future that would probably be a technology that would be advanced to look at. We do have access through a private vendor to use drones on a major wildland incident, and we do those from time to time to take surveillance shots of the fire and look for infrared readings and find out what hotspots are. So we do incorporate that technology. This is not something we own. We just use it through a private vendor.
I thought it would be a great asset to you, so that's why I was wondering, and it would save possibly people's getting injured or in bad areas.
Well, you got to remember in our air program, we have aircraft flying, helicopters and air tankers. We also have an air attack ship. So that air attack ship is the coordinator of all those resources. They're talking to the ground resources, they're communicating with the helicopters, they're communicating with the air tankers, and coordinate those drops, and they offer another set of eyes there for the safety of the firefighters. So we have a mechanism in place. It's just about the availability of that technology, the cost of that technology, which is very, very expensive. So in someday in the future, I'm sure it will be a piece of our arsenal someday. But right now, in my career, it's not there now, and obviously available, but we just don't have that access to it as a daily basis as part of our arsenal of resources.
I would hope you have it sooner rather than later for that purposes. And the last one is any of this information that you're putting out, getting from the cameras, is it going to be accessible to the public from the web?
Right now, the camera technology, as we kind of get more experience with it and we understand the availability of it, we're going to have a secure site right now just for our fire officers and our command center. We're not going to make it public just yet. Now, will that be something in the future? Possibly. But right now, as we kind of figure out the procedures and how it's going to work for us and the benefit is, how secure that site is, we're going to kind of keep it kind of locked down for now.
Thank you very much.
The only thing I would add to that is we can take the camera feeds, and we have a Twitter account that we're getting pretty active with. And if you follow Butte County Fire on Twitter, you'll get some feeds as time moves on.
Thank you for your presentation. I have a sort of futuristic question. I understand the great technology that these cameras provide you, and I would call it at the local level, especially when they're interlap. Is there any work out there being done with satellite broad range detection of fire?
Yes, but I don't know enough about it to really say other than yes. I mean, I've seen it, and when I was in my old previous job, I did a lot of GIS work, and that technology was available back then 10 years ago, and I know it's there. We use a lot of IR, infrared, for fire mapping and for detecting hotspots. Satellite imagery is certainly an option. Drones are a possibility. I think from a firefighting standpoint, we have to remember when we have aircraft operating at different levels in the atmosphere, the drones are a safety hazard for the helicopters, which operate at treetop level. And so we have an aircraft, an air tactical ship that operates at a higher level that oversees the overall air operations of the incident. And then we also have, on larger fires, when we have multiple helicopters working, we'll have a helicopter coordinator a helicopter coordinator's sole responsibility is the helicopter safety, and they dictate and direct the helicopter operations. So we have multiple levels. So drone technology is certainly there. Possibly we might get into it someday as an agency, but it has to be something that fits into the aviation piece and something that fits in safely. Because there's a lot of aircraft flying over significant fires, and aircraft safety is a big issue.
So there's always time for more questions. We did have a little presentation on the evacuation plan, and Mr. Galsarian, or who's going to take the lead on that? Okay.
Okay, so and first off, I want to say that this is a combined effort, and you don't see the people up there that are involved with this, but
If the panel wants to come on down again, up to you. You don't have to go back afterwards. We can get you where we're at.
The evacuation plans are something that have been in place in Paradise and Upper Ridge for better than 10 years. I remember working on them, like I said, when I was at my GIS job 10 years ago plus. And so the Paradise Upper Ridge evacuation plan is one. It's a single plan. As many of you have probably already seen, there's some on the back table. Brand new plans just came off the press last week. They'll be mailed out to residents in Paradise, Magalia, and Sterling City around the 22nd, I believe it is, or 24th, excuse me, just before Thanksgiving, they'll be coming out. So first off here, there's many agencies involved in this. Butte County Fire Safe Council, Paradise Fire Safe Council, Town of Paradise, Upper Ridge, Butte County OES, Sheriff's Office, CHP, CAL FIRE, Town of Paradise Fire Department, Butte County Fire Department. There's all the agencies that would typically be involved in an evacuation who've had input to this plan for many, many years. So this plan that you see here, I just kind of want to take an opportunity to introduce it tonight because it's going to be coming out. And this is just the north end of the Paradise part of the plan. So one thing I want to point out on the plan is in Paradise, they're identified by zones. So what you want to do when you get your plan is, first off, it's premised on the Ready, Set, Go. The Ready, Set, Go, that's what I'm looking for. Basically, ready means get yourself ready for the time when you may have to evacuate. Set means there's a fire, get yourself your last minute belongings and things together, and the plan talks about all this in detail. And then go is, hey, it's time to pack up, time to be packed and get on the road and go. So in Paradise, you have zones. Zone 1, 2, and 3, for instance, 4, 5, they're just numbered across, and then there's another page here which I'll show you. So when you get your plan, you're going to want to make sure that you're located, what zone you're located in, and be ready. And one thing I want to point out is there's radios for Town of Paradise. AM 1500 public radio will be your link to listening to when what's going on with fire activity. AM 1460 for the Upper Ridge. One of the biggest things in the Paradise Plan, there's been some changes to the zones, and one of the biggest changes is in particular along Pence Road. I think this is Pence Road right here. So there's a drain. In the old plan, the zone was cut right on Pence Road. Everybody to the west side of Pence Road was in a different zone, and people on the east side were in another zone. It made no sense, and we learned in 2008 that when we had to evacuate this whole side of town, that the people on this side of town were wanting to come and go from their property, and the people on this side of town were locked out. So what we did is we did what logic would dictate. We brought it to where anything that's accessible off of Pence Road is now in, for instance, these different zones. That's a major change with the zone. But there's other things that occurred as well with Paradise zones. So the other thing I want to point out is public assembly points. This is the public assembly point. And a public assembly point is not an evacuation center. And jump in here, John Galsarian from County OES, but a public assembly point is an initial point where people will gather. They've been evacuated, they'll gather, and then they'll be redirected to a longer-term shelter. Okay, so number A right there, or letter A rather, is where we're at right now. So this is one of our public assembly points. E is Beyond Fitness on Skyway. And then, of course, here's the bottom part of the map again, and then we have C, which is the Seventh-day Adventist Church on Academy Drive. Most of you are familiar with that. And then I think I missed the auditorium. B is the auditorium up here. the senior center, and then Tall Pines Entertainment Center is D. So those are the 5 public assembly points in the town of Paradise. Should you be directed to evacuate, you'll be directed to one of those initially. Another major thing that took place in this plan, and I want to introduce tonight, is we have a plan. If you turn to the very back page, if you have a plan, I'll just take it for a couple of years. Oh, I'm sorry. No, the full plan. You just have the map there. Yeah. Excuse me. So if you have the full plan on the very back page, right here at the bottom, thank you. I'm sorry. That's the front page. Okay. Right here, the lower half of the back page is what's called one-way evacuation operations. Thank you. And so what that means is, many of you might have also heard it termed as contraflow. And in Paradise, we know we have some areas that have narrow streets. We hope to never have to use one-way evacuation, but if we do, we have a plan in place to use it. And what that means is, and normally we probably wouldn't use it on Clark Road. The more likely scenario for us to have to use one-way evacuation would be Pence Road. If we had to take people out Pence Road, south on Pence down to Highway 70, what we would do if we implemented one-way evacuation is we would close Pence Road from one point to another point, and all traffic in that segment would be one direction. So at every driveway, every intersection, there would be ultimately, it's take time to implement it a little bit, there would be a sign directing, it will say one-way evacuation, and it will direct you on that course. And that's something that John Gelsarian's shop is working on, along with Public Works and several other entities, to get that kind of signage. So just be aware of one-way evacuation. If you see that, that just means that that road has been closed and all traffic will be routed one way away from the fire, one direction, for at least a segment of that road. CHP would probably escort. We perceive that CHP would escort the initial vehicles. Once everybody gets in a line, it's going to be pretty obvious that everybody's going in one direction. So that's how that little concept works. Yes?
I don't want to jump in it. What about Magalia?
You're going to get to that. Yep. Sorry. Okay, so Magalia. Any questions on one-way evacuation? Yes?
The last time we evacuated, we had a fire just south of here. The roads were terrible. There were nobody at intersections, with stop signs and lights, pass traffic through. Everybody stop, go, stop, go, and that had traffic really balled up. Concentrate on getting that traffic through the stop signs.
Yeah. The idea would be for Public Works to secure the traffic signals and stop signs, working with the local law enforcement, Paradise Police, County Sheriff, and CHP, to secure the signals and stop signs so that we can keep traffic flowing. We realize that has happened and could potentially happen again, but it's going to take time to implement a plan. It takes time and resources, but that is there, and John can probably help address that.
Additionally, on the Paradise plan, it used to be 12 zones, now it's 14, so the zones are a little bit smaller, so we'll be able to evacuate smaller pieces at a time.
Another thing I want to point out too is there's a natural tendency when smoke hits the air for everybody to want to grab the keys, get to the car, and get on the road. But when everybody tries to evacuate at one time, that's when things get bottled up. If we do it in an orderly fashion, just like in an evacuation drill when you were in 6th grade, if everybody goes out orderly, it would be a lot easier. So what the focus would be is to say, for instance, if we had a fire in the south end of town, like we did with the Humboldt fire that was coming from this direction, like this, focus would be zones 10, 11, 12, 13, potentially initially, maybe in 14. And then we might move up. So again, stay tuned to public radio that we talked about and follow the directions, and we'll get through this order.
So would the streets be sealed off from the zones that weren't being evacuated?
Say that again, I'm sorry.
If there's an evacuation, let's say 3 zones are getting evacuated, would the other areas be stopped from coming out? The other zones?
Potentially.
That didn't happen last time, that was a big problem.
Right. And again, like I said, it's when everybody tries to go through the funnel at one time is when it gets bottled up. So the idea would be to take the areas that are immediately in jeopardy or closest in jeopardy, get those out, and then work elsewhere. The other thing is we might take these zones out south on Pence, for instance. We may take the other ones out up north and just leave them, just move them out north, or leave them in a public assembly point, move them back in. Because you may or may not be out of your house for a long period of time. It just depends on the circumstances. There's too many circumstances related to the fire's direction, rate of travel, and spread to say unequivocally this is how we do it every time. Okay, so anything else, John? Okay, so Upper Ridge. Upper Ridge, the zones are a little different in the Upper Ridge. They're identified by a common name: Lovelock Zone, Powelton Zone, North Kootling Zone, Sterling Zone. And the public assembly points are, the only change to the public assembly points is Sterling City. We've added this public assembly point here, which is the old mill site. So if you go into Sterling City, right there where it makes the hard left as you start into the community, there's a road that goes behind to the old mill site. And that's been cleared open enough to where we can put some people in there as an initial public assembly point. Excuse me. Okay, and then the bottom part of the Upper Ridge, you'll see all the other zones. So we have Cedarwood School is A, Pine Ridge School B, Pines POA is C up there, and then D would be the Save More, Mart. Save More.
The old holiday market.
The old holiday market on Lakeside, thank you. And then E, Magalia, the old Magalia Church, and then F again is Sterling City Mill Site. So, you see the old Magalia zones, each of them have a little different color. So take a look, and these are based upon, these zone boundaries are based upon, okay, you can access this zone only from, off Ponderosa Way, for instance, here. Okay, that's all I have on that. John, do you have anything else to add on that?
Thank you very much. So, again, I want to appreciate all the people that came to sit on this panel. Not every one of them spoke, but we'll close it out with open session, like anything you want to ask. And if we can't answer it, we can always get back to you, too.
We want to point out too during the open session that we have the maps that were up in the previous session.
If you can repeat that, sorry.
The maps of the repeaters are on the wall back here. We also have a map that shows those fire safe council and other kind of treatments that have been done in these communities to thin out the forest.
Yeah, I'd just like to take time to thank PG&E for their contribution this year and funding. Without it, we wouldn't have.
Joe Wilson, rep for PG&E, he left early, so I'll pass that along to him. But yeah, PG&E is great. Yes, sir.
I have a suggestion with the gentlemen that were on the panel, just to be able to go up front in case we wish to ask a specific question for a moment after we finish.
Some of them I'm the boss of, and some of them aren't. But if everyone would like to go back to the panel, I appreciate it.
No, just stand up.
Oh, stand.
You can just stand up there, we can just talk to them.
Okay.
Don't have to sit down. When we're done, because I got a couple of questions I'd like to ask individuals.
Fire money, where is that going?
Oh, you mean the SRA fee money?
It seems like it's paying that money to us, that would be non-problem, no one would ever even mention it.
Right. I think we actually had a slide, and since we have the question, let's let them speak.
So I'm going to be very general because as a CAL FIRE representative, I'm just the steward of administrating the fee, the SRA fee, and what we can do with it. It was Assembly Bill X-129 approved by the legislature in 2011, introduced through the Board of Forestry. Correct, Senator? Okay. So in the billing process here locally, and that's how it came about. It wasn't something we went as an agency went out looking for. We became the stewards of it. As a agency, we were told to be the stewards of this SRA fee and how we're going to apply that. So I put some bullet points on there because I knew this question was going to come up, so I can't prepare it. So the billing cycle for Butte County is in the month of March. You guys get your billing that are in SRA in the month of March. And your bill this last year was $117.33. Your bill is not what the total cap is, the maximum is, because you have the luxury of having Butte County Fire Department as another part of your organization. So your bill's $5 less than somebody who doesn't have a Butte County Fire Department organization to help them out. So you get a little bit of a discount. It's a discount. So how we are able to use the funds that are collected here locally and projects that we're going through. We're just today actually was the last day to submit concept ideas for the coming year to apply those dollars that are being collected for vegetation management, public safety. Fees are used now for arson investigation, to make arrest. A lot of our positions in our Fire Prevention Bureau are funded to do that, to be able to do those tasks. Pre-fire engineering, we have fuel reduction projects up and down in all different parts of the county that are being funded. We're also, if you guys remember, early before July, there was a couple of PSAs that were out there, public service announcements, where I was on the TV making Ready, Set, Go and One Less Spark. Those were funded through the SRA fee money that would allow us to make those commercials and put them on the air. Highway 32, we started a project, we cleared quite a bit of property. We started doing Lower Skyway, and then the fiscal year kind of came to an end, and then we had to retool and get this process back in place again. So it's a moving target that we're still trying to wrap our hands around, and a lot of moving pieces in it to make sure it's done properly. Some of the fire safe councils are using the money for projects. There's different entities, Butte County Public Works put in for different projects to do clearance along roadways and to make those safe corridors for people to evacuate, and also provide a lot of fire start off the roadside. It gives us a better chance of extinguishing the fire before it gets into the heavier fuels and brush. Like I said, education is a big piece of it. We really want to push those public service announcements. I think we had great success in a public service announcement that went out this last year. People were a little more careful. We had less, in this county at least, we had fewer fires that became larger damaging fires. And I think it was successful. So as an agency, what I can do with the money and what we do and how we incorporate that with our cooperators through the Fire Safety Council, Butte County Fire Department, and we work together to do projects that get the best bang for the buck. And that's all I can really speak about, how we use the money and what we're doing with it here locally. There's certain guidelines we can and can't do. We had a conversation, why aren't we staffing lookouts with that money? It's not built into law, that's not built that way. It wasn't allowed to do that. It's basically vegetation management, education, arson, pre-fire engineering, prevention staff, those kind of tasks are being done. One thing that we did put into it, or what's now I understand, is maintenance. We can clear all day long, but if we don't follow the maintenance to keep those brushes from growing back up, we're wasting our time. So if we're going to clear brush, let's do a maintenance program behind it and maintain it.
So Greg, how do you determine, or how was it determined who got the fee assessed to them? Maybe Mr. Nielsen would know this, but I mean, I understand, my understanding is it's only on unincorporated areas that the fee is being billed to the person.
Well, the website in the red box there, I don't know if you can see it very well, but if you go on that website, it gives you can put in your address and it'll tell you exactly where you're sitting in. You're in the unincorporated areas, in that state responsibility. You have a habitable structure on there. All those kind of things are looked at. Again, I don't have the really fine details of the law, but Senator Nielsen, I'm sure you might want to speak to it more if he likes to. But that's how us as an organization, Cal Fire Organization, working with Butte County Fire Department, other agencies and fire safety councils, can apply these resources to do things the best we can here to make it fire safe for our communities.
Greg, would you just read what that
Yeah,
site
it's www. I'm sorry, that's all right. It's my job. www.firepreventionfee.org.
Okay, thank you. Now I can see it. Thank you.
Senator Nielsen. Well, let me pipe on, and Chief McFadden is right on in what they're doing here, okay? So there's some good that has come with the fire tax, but I have to have a very different take on it. And if you have difficulty with the fire tax, do not be mad at CAL FIRE. This was not their idea. They're implementing what the legislature told them to do. And they have not done it very well. 2 years ago in a budget committee hearing, I had legislative counsel come testify. And a direct response to my question was the fire tax legal and how it was being used legal? And he answered no, with a whole sheet of papers to demonstrate that. I thanked him for helping with the Howard Jarvis lawsuit. The only action on that fire feed now is a lawsuit pending by Howard Jarvis taxpayers. And the state is fighting it very vigorously. So if you have issues with the fire tax, what you need to do is contact other people around California that you know who have similar concerns about the fire tax, because the legislature will not respond and do anything about it until enough people are angry about it. And thus far, they are not angry enough. People I represent are, and I am, because how it happened and what it is being used for. Meaning, it's not entirely being used for what purposes it was intended and what you were promised. Now, this is good news to me. And I think it's partly because we shined a spotlight 2 years ago on the abuses of the use of the fire tax. But again, it's not an issue that these gentlemen and ladies are responsible for. They're just doing the best they can with what the legislature told them to do. Anything more on that particular? Yes.
I just wondered if every dollar of the SRAV that's collected in Butte County, does it stay in Butte County, or does it go to Sacramento and then
No,
sent
it
back?
doesn't stay in Butte County, no. You would only hope that that would be the case, but it does not happen that way, no.
Well, I'm wondering.
Anyway, it's kind of a sore spot with me, folks, don't let your concern about the fire tax detract from all the positive that's occurred here tonight. And I think the most beautiful thing, and Supervisor Teeter, thank you very much for availing all of us that have some responsibility to all of these good people the opportunity to have an exchange with them, to learn from them, and to give them knowledge too. And I would hope you, as has been the case with me in all of these meetings that I have all of the time, including on the lookout tower. We had some early meetings this year with some of you about how do we get that manned, and we had meetings with CAL FIRE, and they were wonderfully cooperative to try to help us out, right? You were part of those meetings. So we can get the job done, and there's evidence here of your government working. I get a little gripey about it sometimes because I see so much about how it does not work. But in this area, you should be very happy to see what you've seen here tonight in terms of the cooperation, the integration, the ideas, the concern about you and your safety and the protection of the lands and the properties that we have here, your personal safety and security, because the good people who work for you are doing their jobs, and they're doing it very well.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. I know I want to get to everyone's question, but I wanted to give Mr. Orr and Lee an opportunity. One of my priorities, obviously, is safety, and hence, meetings like this or more meetings in the future, whatever you need as the public. But Jordan Hill Road and Doe Mill Road are both very important potential escape routes. And BLM stepped up, Department of Transportation, Mr. Lee, who introduced himself. I think it'd be nice if he could give an update of the bridges, and appreciate it.
On the West Fork or Westy Flat Bridge, we did about a month and a half ago, we pulled the deck off. So the old wooden deck that was there and was rated only for 3 ton has now been removed. We found some damaged beams. We ordered the material, we replaced those 18 beams, and the wood that's going to go back on the deck is being manufactured up in Oregon, will be brought back down here and installed sometime in December. And the bridge, instead of being rated at 3 tons, we're rated at about 35 tons. So it's making a huge change in weight. Again, low boys, no, can't go across that bridge. You'll have to unload and take it across before it doesn't cross it as it's done in the past. But the only thing we have down there as far as roadway work is just on one side of the east side of the bridge. There's an old culvert in there that's not working functionally. We put the deck back on, we'll get in and repair that. So that'll be all we do on that particular route. Now back to New Creek Bridge. New Creek Bridge has been removed, built in 35, rated for 3 ton. And we're putting back in an 80,000 pound standard highway bridge. It'll be 17 feet wide. The bridge girders are coming from Arizona tonight, and they will be on their way. And Monday we'll bring a 350-ton crane into the Highway 32 side, and we'll set it up down there, get the girders up and installed by Friday. Then we'll start doing the sub work on the bottom and getting ready for concrete, which concrete deck will be poured somewhere in about around the 12th or 14th of December, and we'll probably finish the bridge in probably early January. Now the road going down, we're putting 4 inches of new gravel on the east side, and from the west side going on to Highway 32, we're putting anywhere from 6 to 8 inches of gravel. We replaced a lot of the culverts, we put some rolling dips in to control water. All the erosion control on the outside has been washing the road away. It's got riprap down there now to control that erosion. So a lot of work's been going on, and we're still doing it right now.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And so the bridge on Whiskey Flats, that would, a fire engine will be able to cross that. Yeah, so big step up in safety, I think, for our area. The thing that we've been really working on, when I say we, the county, is trying to get our federal legislatures to take ownership of at least the Doe Mill Road and to continually maintain that and keep that as a viable safety route. And so if you feel inclined to write your federal representatives, I urge you to, and you can always call my office if you want talking points. But it really needs to step up to keep that road funded. Butte County just doesn't have the maintenance or the dollars for maintenance of all our dirt roads and gravel roads. Any other questions? All right.
What time do we go home?
What was that? We're going to wrap it up at 15 till.
I don't have a question. I just want to digress a bit. And John Bilzerian came and talked to us in Sterling City about a month or so ago and gave us emergency plans and evacuation plans. And I'm going to tell you something. Sterling City is prepared. Thanks to John. If you haven't heard him do his presentation, y'all should have him come do it. Thank you, John.
Any other questions? Anything? No?
I said, no, I'm cold.
Okay, it is chilly. I guess we'll just wrap it up. I want to say again, Sharon's got something to say. Then we'll wrap it up.
Yeah, I just wanted to thank everybody here too. CAL FIRE, I work close with Dave, and it's a pleasure. He keeps me abreast of what's going on in Sawmill Peak. I am the representative here for Bear on the Ridge, and thank you for everybody that belongs to my group for being here tonight. I really, really appreciate that. The support, this is what I get all year long, the support, and it's just very, very important and very, very nice. We are trying to keep Sawmill Peak staffed. We do have some alternatives possibly coming up, but it's still going to take our efforts to help them get this accomplished. So I just wanted to let everyone know that as of 2013, since Mr. Ollinger closed up his shop, we presented Butte County Fire Safe Council with a check for $17,561.46. That was monies earned in 2013 between Bear on the Ridge and the Friends of Sawmill Peak. And I just can't be any more proud of an organization than the one that I represent. This year we have raised $15,960. So, yeah, that's just a really cool thing. So we do have some money for next year, guys. So if we're having to staff it, or if we have to talk alternative measures, we can certainly do that. So thank you, everybody, for your support, and thanks, Doug and Senator, for being here, and CAL FIRE. Thank you.
Well, most importantly, thank you all for coming. I would like to also, our Upper Ridge Fire Department also raises an amazing amount of money, and also our Fire Safe Council does their own fundraising as well. So the community is really, have stepped up to the safety, and obviously that shows to how important it is to all us up here, and you know, we're going to work towards making you safer. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, everyone, for coming. But no, that's okay.
No, sure.
I'm just surprised when I came that there's not more people here.
Right,
yes. And the people that live in Paradise and Magalia, we love this place.
Yes.
So I would suggest another meeting maybe, and a little more, maybe not on a
I'm
hot
game
Friday
to do
night.
another meeting, and you know, part of it is you know, we use the newspapers. We send out to people we know. You know, we can always do, when I say we, Robin and I, we can always do a better job. So if you have an email list, well, if you want to be on our email list, or if you know other people that may want to, I don't want to just get an email number or email address of someone that didn't give it to, but if you ask your email list if they would like to be on ours for notification, that would be great.
Okay.
So building that list would really help us, and any ideas you have on getting the word out would be even better.
I'm going to put the video on YouTube, so it'll be there.
Pardon?
I'm going to put the video on YouTube.
And I appreciate you videoing this. So, no, we're not going to serve drinks.
I see I got quite a few people
We might.
signing up for contact tonight, and I will call each of you to make sure I have your
Yeah.
information.
Hang on, Robin.
Thank you. I see a lot of people have signed up for contact tonight with our office, and this is a private list. Do not share this. You are not on a mail list that gets sold. So I will call you if you've left your phone number, or I'll read your writing the best I can, and you'll be on our list, and you'll get an expense when we do things.
Thank you. I don't think this one's on. So anyway, luckily I have a loud mouth, and I'll use it for you guys anytime. So call my office, anything. Del Oro was brought up of their rate raising. I'm going to get some answers. So if you're curious about that, please give us your contact information.
I just want to say that the new evacuation plans are on the back desk here.
Yeah, evacuation plans on the back table.